welcome back to another Tips with Tony brought to you by FP20 Analytics. In today's video, we're diving into a common modeling challenge, how to cleanly connect two fact tables when they share a common element but don't share a common dimension. We'll walk through a scenario involving purchase orders, but this approach can apply to a myriad of situations. Maybe you're working with a type 2 slowly changing dimension. Perhaps you have a many-to-many relationship you need to solve for. I will show you how a bridge table can solve these issues, bringing clarity to your model, improving your slicer behavior, and making analysis much easier. In our scenario, I was working with a client with field parameters. And the challenge became that when I was switching between field parameters, the PO number would start to show repeating values. So we're going to take a look in Power BI and see how we can solve. So let's jump in. Okay, so let's take a look at our data model. And for the purposes of this video, I did make it quite simplistic. So we have our two fact tables at the bottom, one for purchase orders and one for receipts or invoices. We have our date dimension, and then we have our vendor dimension. And if we take a peek at our fact table, you're going to see that we have receipt ID, PO number, and a couple of different metrics that are important to our fact table. If we hop over into our report, I'll show you kind of what's going on behind the scenes. So our client wanted to have a field parameter that pulled on elements from both of these fact tables. So if I open up the metric select, you can see that I have purchase amount from the purchase amount fact table, the quantity, as well as the received amount, which is coming from the received amount fact table, and the quantity. So this all works absolutely fine. And what you can see in our matrix, we have category, vendor name, but then when we get to PO number, that PO number doesn't exist in our vendor dimension. It doesn't exist in any dimension because it is an attribute of the fact table. So if I pull on PO number, in this case, I pulled it from the purchase order table, and I have metrics from purchased and received. When I start to dig into this, you can see what happens. So we have a PO that shows up here for purchase quantity, but for received quantity, because there's no relationship from that PO number to our fact receipts, it's showing as a repeating value. So how can we solve for this? This is a great indication for how to build a bridge table. Now, I will caveat that you can also do this in Power Query, but for today, I'm just going to show you how to do this, creating a DAX calculated table. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is create a table. So we can go up to the top here to modeling and new table. And I'm just going to call this, we'll just call it bridge for now, just for ease. And now really what we need to do is we need to ensure that we are grabbing from each of the fact tables a distinct set of PO numbers, because there might be some crossover. You might see the same PO number show up in the receipts as well as the purchase order, and we want to eliminate any kind of duplication because we need to create that one-to-many relationship from this new bridge table to our fact tables. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. Now I'm going to show you the way, like the pattern that I'm using, but that's not to say that there's other ways to write this code, because there's always multiple ways to get to the end result, especially with DAX. But I am going to call on something that's union. And this would be similar to an append if you're working in Power Query. So this is the function that we're going to call on. And then I have to identify which column that I want to select from. So I'm going to do a select column. I'm going to use this, and we're going to see if it works. And then if we get an error message, which would be fantastic because troubleshooting through these things is what we like to do. But we're going to put in a filter, and I'll start with purchase order. And then we're just going to say not is blank, because if it's blank, we kind of want to skip it. And then we're going to bring in that value of PO number. Okay, and we're going to close that. And then do this. And then we have to provide a column title for this. And so in this case, I'm just going to call it PO number. So this is the column that we're creating in our table. I got too many. That's okay. We'll just keep going, and then we'll see if we still continue to get that error message. We say we want to call anything that's purchase order number with a number sign, and then we're going to close that. And then the next thing we're going to do is add in the second part of our union query. So here we're going to do select columns again, select columns, and then this time we're going to come to the other fact table. So now we're going to go to our receipt fact table. And then again, we're just going to use that not as blank. Maybe we'll speed this up so you're not all struggling with me. And then PO number. And then we go add some brackets. So you want to make sure that it's the exact same name because you're thinking about this as an append. So you have to make sure the syntax is the same between these two column names so that it doesn't create a brand new column because you've isolated it, called it something else. So now we're going to close this, and then in our return, and then the big part in our return is we want to make sure that we're only returning distinct values. So we're going to do distinct and combined. And then we're going to hit this check mark. So we don't have any error message, which is fantastic. So that being said, we don't know yet if there might be any kind of issue once we get to our relationship. Oops. And we're going to take our PO number and we're going to create a relationship to our PO number here. And you can see it's making a one-to-many relationship, so that's fantastic. And then I'll do the same thing over here. And again, there's no errors. So now if we come back over to here, we want to remove the reference to the PO number from the fact table. So we get rid of this and we come over to our bridge table and we bring in that PO number. And voila! Look at how fantastic and quick that was. And you can use this in multiple situations in order to get this type of functionality. So whether I'm just picking from the purchase order, it will just work. And then also if I'm in just the received information, it will also work. But it's able to cross both of those both of those fact tables through that relationship to return the values for each of those PO numbers. It's pretty fantastic. So that, in essence, is the power of a bridge table. It helps unifying your data model, clean up slicers, and create consistent insights across related but separate fact tables. And even though today we looked at the PO as an example, this same technique applies to other real-world situations, like handling type 2 dimensions where history matters, or managing many-to-many relationships, like students taking multiple courses or employees assigned to multiple projects. If this helped simplify your model or sparked ideas for your own use case, give us a like and subscribe to FP20 Analytics. Drop a comment if you'd like to see more advanced bridge table examples or other modeling strategies. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.